Welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine. He's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so we'll have our little trending topics here. This is National Bouillabaisse Day.
I'm not going to celebrate it. I'm moving on to other stuff.
Yeah, I just thought I just thrown that out there. We don't have to spend it. We can move on to other topics now.
It is like a one pot cooking thing, which is a Louisiana thing, sort of. So, in that way, I feel a little bit of kinship. But
well, I probably would have ignored it had you not been from Louisiana. Okay. So we'll throw a little bit out there to Louisiana. Things that have happened are happening. Alan Thicke passed away, kind of surprisingly, 69 years old, father from Growing Pains. Show ran for, about 7 years, I think. And so, he was playing hockey, apparently, with his son.
That happens. Like, Pete Maravich died coming off a screen. They down screen for him, and he comes up to catch the ball, and then you see him just go,
whoa.
That was it. So, and he's kind of a tall, thin guy. See, that's the same as Maravich. It's that Flo. They say that Lincoln would have been dead in 6 weeks if he had not been shot because of Flo Hyman's disease. Tall, gaunt people, heart problem. Anyway, I'm not sure that's what it was. But.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wonder. I mean, I think about the guy who played Lurch on the Addams Family. I mean, a lot of these, we've seen a lot of these big, tall guys die very early.
Right.
So I kind of wonder if those are also a factor for those guys as well. Los Angeles Rams, they finally fired Jeff Fisher. This guy, I don't even know how this guy's lasted.
So first of all, it's kind of like Lane Kiffin. He had a terrible record at the Raiders, right? But the Raiders were a mess. Like the Rams have been a mess, a personnel mess the entire time he's been there. And it was kind of viewed as things beyond its control. But, you get enough high draft picks, it ought to start turning on its own. And I think they're in a different fan base now. I think if you want Los Angeles to notice, you're going to have to. You can't be 4-9.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is a major sports and media market. The fans are not going to be that patient. There's plenty of other things for them to look at and do and spend their money on. So you're going into a competitive market like that. You better put up a good team. Otherwise, the fans aren't going to show up, and that won't work for them at all financially.
And the other thing is that the weird thing about this one is they extended his contract like late in the summer, and then they didn't tell anybody about it for months. There was no announcement. So it's like they were kind of slipping one by the fans anyway. So I think they're just making that right.
That was kind of weird because I only saw the contract extension thing about the time he was fired, and I'm like, well, what is going on here? Why doesn't anybody know about this? Doesn't make any sense. Kanye West shows up to Trump Tower.
Man, I started thinking, just go get a job like holding one of those boom mics. And just, all day just to watch who walks in and out of there. I mean, it'd be a drag getting to work every day through all the traffic and security and whatnot. But, wow, it's just you never know. And I think it's interesting because he's not going to sit in the boxes we've always understood politics to be. It just, some of it you're going to be real uneasy about, but it's going to be because he doesn't sit in those boxes. He's outside of that box. Kanye West need not be his enemy, right? We're starting from a fresh place. And if he can get 3 or 4 people like that to disrupt that narrative, that's a big game changer for him.
Yeah, this whole thing has just been interesting. I mean, I know a lot of the liberals have called this kind of a reality show, but it's been fun to watch.
Yeah.
And you see how many people, realizing that in a matter of 37 days or whatever it is now that he will become the president of the United States, they need to deal with that. And one of the better ways is why not go and at least make an appearance and look like you're making peace with him a little bit. Yeah. It sets a good tone for that. So and Kanye, he probably needs a little bit of positive publicity. Lately.
And there were a lot of articles out there saying, hey, well, this is the last we'll see of Kanye and all these guys at the White House. Maybe not, right? Maybe that there's a new alliance. This you're talking about. If he can fix this up, you're talking about a generational move because this is really, the last big chance to push it this way.
Right.
You push it this way 8 or 12 years, it'll stay this way for a while, right? It'll
Right.
be for them to reel it all in. So it's really interesting what's going on.
All right, and I know you're really excited about this, and that Rogue One is coming, opening up on Friday.
Yeah, I've seen the highlights for that. That looks pretty. The main time that I ever go to see a movie is over Christmas, so it's on the list.
Yeah, so we'll actually be heading out kind of your way because we actually have tickets to see it at the Smithsonian at the IMAX.
Oh, yeah.
So that's our big trip is to go out there and deal with all that. But we show up at 4:00 when the parking's free.
Oh,
so we don't have to double. We don't have to double what we have to spend out there.
That's right.
All right. So then, news that just seems to be everywhere is Russian hacking, causing the election to be lost for Clinton. All this stuff.
Well, there has been in the last 2 or 3 days, you're starting to see some serious crawfishing on this, right? Because at first it was like they hacked the election. No, they did not hack the election. What they did, they're now saying, okay, here's what we're actually accusing them of. And what they're actually accusing them of is generating stories that made her look bad. Well, I mean, I want to know stuff that makes her look bad or good or whatever. I'm trying to evaluate who to vote for. More information is better. They're not, when you say hacking, people get in their heads, okay, they fixed voting machines and they, erased votes for her or whatever. None of that is alleged. It's just they were an influencer in the election. Well, the Saudis, a third of the money she had came from the Saudi government. What did they want for a third of the money of your campaign war chest?
Right, and I was watching Tucker Carlson last night. And he was interviewing a left-wing professor that had put out a piece about this whole thing, and Tucker has been really, really good. It's really a joy to watch him take on the liberals because I don't know, he's just one of the best at it now. As I'm watching him, and let the professor kind of explain his theory behind this. And Tucker asked him specifically, says, "Well, what are the specific reasons? Where's your evidence?" That this election, was changed, that the results were changed as a result of what you're saying. And he said, well, because just kind of what you just alluded to, is because they put out all the emails, all the stories. And he said, but that's really more conjecture than anything else. I mean, that's not hard proof that any of those things, changed anybody's mind.
Right.
And turn the election the other way. And I've been seeing stories, or other people saying too, is that all this stuff that we're seeing is like, well, this also provides the cover about the fact is that Hillary was a terrible candidate.
Right.
It's all providing cover.
Right. I think the longer they rationalize it with this stuff, the better it is for us because they're not getting on with fixing the problem. They're not even addressing the problem. Assange says he didn't get it from the Russians. The FBI says he didn't get it from the Russians. They say the Republicans were hacked too, but they didn't release the information against them because they wanted Trump to win. I don't think they had any. I think it was beyond their wildest hopes that Trump would win. I think at the best, they may have been trying to run up her negatives a little bit, make her a little more vulnerable to deal with. But so all these people are saying that this is not true. And they're like, the other thing is, curious part of this is, the CIA says, we have not discovered any smoking gun in the last 2 weeks. Now we understand how this happened, right? It's just the longer we think about it, the more we think this has happened. Well, the longer you think about it, the more, your boss is asking for an excuse why it happened. I mean, this is a political document, which, when you politicize everything, right, what happens is, the institutions we've come to trust are seen as political entities. The CIA is seen as a political entity in this, right? They did the boss's bidding and put out a thing pro the boss and his allies and against the opponents. I think that one of the, I think heads will swim at how fast Brennan is gone.
Yeah, right. I mean, and then you have Harry Reid saying, well, we need a 9/11 kind of investigation. I mean, what are you going to find?
What?
Yeah, exactly. Of what? What are you going to find out? I mean, I think everybody's glad to see that Harry is on his way out, and he certainly has is definitely throwing out some barbs there. Even against Romney, still you'd think that this stuff would kind of pass by, but he doesn't regret things he said against Romney. Kind of attacked him, and Romney's kind of like, well, good riddance. And it's one of the better things that one of the better things that Romney said lately is like, finally, show something and tell these guys off, because that's what they should have done a long time ago.
Yeah, and he's the thing about Harry Reid is like, what is it they want to do? Most of the sentient people even on the other side are saying, okay, this did not affect the outcome of the election. Okay, sold. Get me to December 19th. Get those guys in there and vote. Let's get on with this, because I just feel and all these things that they're doing, and now they want to brief the electors on Trump's. No. Because we need to go back 8 years. We need to brief them on, show them that tape of Obama saying he's from Kenya, right? You're telling an audience on video, right, that he's from Kenya, and putting it on college applications. We didn't talk about any of that, because once they're elected, they're elected.
Right. And then we have, Nate Silver from 538. He was saying now that the Comey letter,
the second letter,
cost Clinton the election.
You know what? I don't think he's totally wrong there.
Yeah.
I think the sense of it I got when that happened on a Friday, right? And so there was no, we went straight into the talks, right? And it was all fresh, and everybody had to answer for it. And I just got a feeling when it happened the second time that a lot of people who were sitting on the fence said, we're going to be investigating and subpoenas and legal lawyers and the entire 4 years this lady's in office. It's not worth it. I think a lot of people just said, I'm going to try Trump at that point. Yeah. I think he's right. I think he has a point.
And that sent the liberals into a tizzy, because up to that point in time, which we've said before on the show, was that they loved Comey. They thought, he was ending things.
He was their hero.
There was not going to be any. They weren't going to prosecute and all this. Oh, he was great. And then he comes out with this other letter, and they're like, then they start,
he hates us. He hates America. He's a plant.
Their whole opinion just changed and turned around.
Their analysis now is that he was always a Republican stooge.
Yeah.
He was always in there, dealing it in this way. But I think, I'm not sure that I totally doubt that, because he worked for Ashcroft. He was a Republican.
Yeah. Right.
But I also think, don't have an illegal server. Don't do all this business on the side. Don't sell policy outcomes to the State Department, and you wouldn't have any of this to worry about.
Right. And I think that's right. I think in the end, the actions that she took, with the server, all of these things, all the funny monkey business with the Clinton Foundation, deciding, raking in all that money from those speeches on Wall Street and things like that. Those things, as those points were driven home to people, because they weren't overly enthused about her to begin with, that's enough to kind of switch, and change that vote of where, and Trump went right for that blue collar vote and really connected with people, and she didn't, all of these things come into play, and the bottom line still comes down to she was a terrible candidate. She didn't connect, and otherwise, how does the Trump campaign flip 200 counties that Obama had?
That's right. And, you won more than 3,000 out of 3,100, right? You're about 57 counties in the whole country. She won.
Yeah. So we see that. So then as a result of this, or part of all this too, there is this huge backlash now against fake news. Social media struggling with it. Facebook, they took the angle first, I guess, of when they were accused of being too partisan and kind of tamping down and preventing conservative news from getting out. They removed their editors and went to kind of a automated system, which became very open to lots of other things going on there, because there were no real people now looking and ferreting this stuff out, and it's just exploded. We posted on our website the other day about the NPR story going into investigating a guy out in L.A. named Justin Kohler, Disinfomedia. He was a little cagey about talking to them at first until he opened up. But, one of the things I thought that was interesting in the article from NPR was they said that they tried to write this kind of news for liberals, and the liberals didn't bite.
Right.
But when they wrote it for conservatives, they just lapped it up like crazy.
Well, those are liberals saying that too.
Yeah. Right. He is a Democrat. That's the other part of it, is that this guy
is trying to make some point about
is fake news. It's coming from a guy who's a registered Democrat and a liberal, and so I think that's all part of it too. So they're like, oh well, it's coming all from the right wing. They're fomenting all this stuff, but there are a lot of liberals.
There are a lot of liberals doing too, and I'm not sure how big a deal that is anyway.
Yeah.
And like we have a pretty good filter for what's real and what's not. Other media, people like reading it and saying, okay, that's probably not true. But what's going to happen is, and you already see it, is some very real news is being put down to fake news. In other words, like the thing about the pizza parlor. I mean, there's still the matter of this guy has a lot of stuff on social media, which you can go publicly look up, right? That is pretty sketchy, right, on that issue. So, fake news, pizza parlor, fake news. Hey, maybe, but I'd still look into that.
Yeah, well, and I just saw something before we started the show that so the New Yorker apparently carries kind of a satire by a guy named Andy Borowitz, and they've had to actually issue a statement because they ran something from him recently, and they called it the Borowitz Report, and they actually had to throw a disclaimer to say this is not real news.
Right.
I mean, it's just getting absolutely kind of crazy and out of hand. I think people are really struggling. It's like, well, who do we trust? What's real? What's fake now? There's just been this proliferation of stuff out there, and these people who are behind this, a lot of the people who are just generating all this stuff, they're making a mint.
Right.
They're really raking it in.
10 to 30,000 a month.
Yeah,
that's make that work.
Yeah, I mean,
fit my lifestyle into that.
I'm thinking that I'm in the wrong career, so we got a lot of talented people around here. We could each set up a fake news site and call. Man, we'd be fine.
We're sitting here sticking to the truth.
Right. This podcast is actually real news. It's not fake. Yeah. But if somebody wants to pay me, we'll discuss that.
Call.
Yeah, we can do whatever you want if you want to pay me enough money, right?
But the thing about it is, okay, 2 points on that. One is the reason that the me's and you's of the world are not doing that is because we're interested in truth, right?
Right.
And the people on the other side too. A lot of them too. I mean, it's not just us. The other thing is, how does this, I get all these arguments on Facebook with people, and I say, what makes you think, people, you'll put up some story from Breitbart, and they'll say, Breitbart, they're not credible. Hey, why are they more credible than less credible than the Washington Post, right? The Washington Post, New York Times, made themselves party organs of the Democrats and campaign organs of the Clinton campaign, okay? Nakedly, publicly, unabashedly, they have those words, misogynist, racist, what all they were, right? That they would just, that list. And somebody's even made it into an acronym now. It's so used and so, set down in the same order every time and so forth. Okay, so they got off their perch, right? They lost their advantage. It was always like, at the end of the day, on our news pages, we call it down the middle, okay? Well, now, on the end of the day, your newspapers, you are a hard left rag, okay? That means the hard right rags are just as credible as you are, right? They're at least honest about what they're doing,
Right. And I think for us, too, is that one of the reasons we don't get into the whole fake news thing is that not only are we seeking the truth, but we also believe in honesty and integrity and things like that. I mean, we have values, and, I'm not here to deceive anybody. We are who we are. We're going to tell you what we think, and I think we analyze these things in a very truthful and honest manner. And whether or not anybody pays me money for that, that's not the point for me in the end, right? So
it's not the point.
Well, it's not that's not the point. I mean, I need to make a living. Yes, okay. We all need to earn something to pay, But it's not the driving force for me. Is to try to get rich or whatever, and things like that. So we also have the Trump cabinet almost complete.
Yeah.
We've got Rex Tillerson there as Secretary of State, Rick Perry for Energy. We only have Agriculture Secretary and Veterans Affairs, I believe, are now the last two slots open.
And then they changed Interior, right?
Interior is now Ryan Zinke. Zinke.
Yeah.
So from McMorris Rogers. This is the other thing about the whole Trump thing is that there's a lot of misdirection. A lot of people brought in. Names go float to the top, and then somebody else comes in. I think they've all been good candidates. No one should feel bad about losing out, but I think Trump and Pence have they know what they want, and they're kind of just saying.
And they keep sifting till they get it.
Right.
And God bless them for it. I mean, They're working hard at this. People say that it's a reality show. It is not a reality show. It is a dead serious thing that's going on. And I think the picks are interesting. I think Tillerson is a good pick. I mean, what has his career been? Going around the world, negotiating with the toughest customers on the globe, right? Russia, Iran, whole Middle East, he knows people all over the world. He's respected by them. I mean, the other thing is the Democrats are now in the position. It's interesting how it's flipped. Like, we were the tough on Russia. They were those guys are not so bad. They're sort of like, they're not that far from us,
right.
What they want to do anyway, right? They still haven't given us the answer, by the way, to what's the difference between a Democrat and a socialist, right? Still waiting on that, okay? So, but now it's like, oh, Russia, bad. We're not their friends. We can't talk to them. We can't even pretend that we've ever met them. And we're saying, hey, maybe the thing is, which I've always said, there is a great deal of stuff that we can and should work together with them on, And so now you have guys in place to do it, and since it's politically expedient to trash them, they're getting trashed for it.
Right. One of the things I thought was interesting about the Tillerson thing, though, was the blowback from the conservative evangelical side of it. Tony Perkins came out, and he had a problem with this pick because he says, ExxonMobil has been giving money to Planned Parenthood, for which ExxonMobil's answer is that is passing on employee contributions. I don't really know it's right. Maybe a little bit of both. And then also saying that Tillerson was part of the group that was allowing gays, gay scoutmasters. Yeah. So, but I understand those concerns, but as Secretary of State, that's not a world leader, global leader type of a thing. I think that's a separate issue. So I don't have a problem with Tillerson basically at this point.
Right, and as we've said before, Trump's going to run this. The Secretary of State's not going to make foreign policy. Trump is going to make foreign policy. So, if he wants to, he's not going to be promoting gay scoutmasters in Somalia.
That'll shock Somalia.
Yeah.
All right.
And Rick Perry.
Yeah.
Rick Perry, very good pick for energy. Understands energy, and I think that's another one of those ones. There's going to be days when we groan a little bit on that one, right? Because Rick Perry has a conservationist streak. He is like in the old days, like Ducks Unlimited, hunting groups, and so forth were the leaders of the conservation movement before the left absconded, and I think that he is a return to that and a healthy one.
Yeah. Rick it'll be interesting to see, and since that was the department that he vowed to abolish. But we've seen this. I've seen this game played before, this song played before. It's always nice to say, but in theory, I don't know how you'd do it anyway. But I wish Rick well. He's a personable guy, and I think
the nation sort of views him differently than Texas does.
Yeah.
The nation is like, he's the guy who couldn't remember the third department, right? But the Texas, he was a highly effective, longest serving governor ever,
right,
in Texas.
Right. All right. So now we have the recount is finally done. This was just such a farce, and we've talked about how ridiculous this was. So he picks up 131 votes. Trump does in Wisconsin. He nets 131 more votes. We don't know the final cost of that recount in Wisconsin. Jill Stein apparently had to put down $3.5 million. If it's more, she'll have to pay more. If it's less, she'll get a refund. But at that level, if you just take the 131 votes and you look at how much money was spent, that's about $27,000 a vote or something like that. I mean,
for the other team.
Yeah.
Not even for you.
Not even for
the
you.
Other team.
So that's kind of crazy. It doesn't cost anywhere near as much to do it in Pennsylvania, things like that. But those things kind of got stopped. It's just a complete waste of time. She raised $7.4 million. The Free Beacon came out with a story that said, that went to the website and discussed, showed how much money they had spent. Nearly $1 million of that money that was raised for this was on consultants and staff. Staff payroll totaled $212,500. Consultants pocketed $364,000. Admin costs, including travel, ran $353,000. So $930,000 was used to pay consultant staff and admin costs, and $4.5 million total in filing fees to the different states. Legal expenses cost them $1.6 million. And what did they get?
They lost votes.
They lost votes.
But what's important about this whole thing to me right now is, half the votes in Detroit are uncertifiable. Okay, this is, their problem in Michigan is they did not fix the election enough. They did not do a sufficient job, right? I mean, because it was apparent they were, you have more votes than you have people registered. They're fixing an election, right? And it's not the Republicans, it's not Trump fans in downtown Detroit fixing an election, right?
Right.
It's them. Okay, so I still say once he gets in, he needs to bipartisan commission, reasonable people on both sides, get to the bottom of getting us an accurate vote, because it's increasingly obvious that it's not happening, and there are irregularities, things that need to be worked on.
Right, and then we'll briefly touch on the Electoral College. We're 5 days away from the Electoral College members meeting to cast their votes. A lot of stuff going on there. You mentioned this whole intel briefing. I think it's 54 of the Democrat electors, want this briefing, which is nonsense.
You already know what you need to know.
Right, and you'd have to have 38 or so, I guess it was, abandon, Trump for this. This is not going to happen, but boy, they're pushing hard. We've got this crazy elector in Texas who I have talked to. I wrote about it.
Ashley Madison had his name on there. Oops.
he's a two-faced publicity hound beyond anything else. So
two-timer too.
Two-timer too.
The thing about the Electoral College, I'll be glad when it's over, because I see, they're in a no-huddle offense. There's still magic to come. The other thing about that is, who are the electors from Maryland? Do you know?
I know one of them for sure, but it's only because he lives in my area. That's
right. But for the most part, we have no idea who these people are. We don't care, because your job is go vote how your state voted. Go vote Democrat since you're in Maryland and Virginia, right? Go vote Republican if you're in Texas or Louisiana, right? So if they're going to start exercising a bunch of discretion, then we need to, who are you? And we need to see your campaign promises. Do you promise to just go vote like you're supposed to? Or are you, because your conscience, I didn't elect your conscience. I elected Trump, right? And we have this weird system. Weird system's fine, but your conscience is not what I'm interested in.
Right, and up until this point in time, I mean, most elections, these electors have been pretty faceless and nameless. We didn't know who they were. We didn't care. They didn't really want to make it public. They just did their job, as they were charged to do. This year, for lots of different reasons, publicity being part of it, and just the left, fomenting all this stuff, we find out who they are. But it's a lot of nonsense in the long run.
Yeah.
All right, so. Well, let's do our 2-minute warning because we're running low of time.
I'm going to take one off your sheet here.
Okay.
It's Jennifer Rubin calling, because it's actually two of them. She called the Trump cabinet ignoramuses, billionaires, and a few generals.
Right.
Right. Because her line of reasoning is you've put a guy in charge of foreign policy who hasn't never done government foreign policy before. You put a guy in charge of housing who's never been a housing official before. Those jobs don't traditionally go to people, housing experts, and who is a foreign policy expert that you could. I mean, they don't want Bolton. He's the only one that kind of fits, right? So the thing about it is like it's going to be people from other things. The other thing that Trump has going for him is, what's going on now does not work. Okay, so anything he wants to try ought to be given the benefit of the doubt, because the system's broken.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know. I watched that segment with Jennifer Rubin. I tell you, all I can say is that, and I saw her, when she was on O'Reilly Factor, earlier, talking about the election and things like that. Before that, she's a little scary to me.
She's a joke. And the thing about it is they're supposed to, she's the conservative columnist. There is not a single pro-Trump. There's not a single non-anti-Trump, non-virulently anti-Trump person on the Post payroll at all.
Right, and then that leads me to the other thing on this that I will take, which is just talking about the newspapers struggling to find pro-Trump columnists. This is kind of karma, payback, whatever. They went so anti-Trump, they figured they had loaded everything up. They figured Trump had no chance. They found all the conservatives, or whatever you want to call them, that were never Trumpers, and they were ready to go. They had everything going. And now that Trump won, they can't find. They're struggling to find people who are pro-Trump to write for them.
They've made no effort to ever understand this, so they're not really going to understand what they're looking for when they do try to find a pro-Trump person.
Yeah. So this will be part of the death of the newspaper industry, is continuing on and everything like that. All right. Well, we're out of time. Thanks again for joining us for another edition of the Bias Buzz, and we'll see you next week.